Yo, what is up? It is your boys They're back with part 4 to what if Deku had Jake Long's powers. Now, boys, I know the series has been a little bit of a hiatus, I guess you could say. I haven't posted this in about a week, and reasoning for that is honestly this series is it's definitely tanked. I mean, I would have expected that it would have gotten so many more views, but that's not going to take away from the fact that I'm going to get the series done and I'm going to do it justice, because Jake Long is one of my favorite characters and I think that he deserves to get a little bit of justice, so I'm going to do this the right way. That being said, we're going to go ahead and get into the recap, and if you guys want part 5, you guys are going to have to smash 60 likes. That being said, let's go ahead and
get started.
Okay, guys, so in the last part, we'd essentially left off with Deku basically winning the entirety of the sports festival, as well as, having a little bit of a makeout session with Melissa afterwards. And a little bit of random stuff, honestly. Now, we're going to go ahead and pick up right when they actually arrive back to class after the UA's festival, the very next day. Now, when they arrive into class, Aizawa will actually be sitting there, just like getting ready to tell them all that they're going to be choosing names. As soon as he tells them that, he would proceed to tell them that Midnight's actually going to be helping them do it. Now, this is when Aizawa would get into his little beanbag, I guess you could say, or his sleeping bag, sorry, and he would proceed to go to sleep. As Midnight would walk in and tell them all they got to get a little bit of pizzazz, as she would proceed to ask them all what they want to be named, and everybody would go with their original names in canon, except for Deku. In terms of what Deku's hero name is going to be, I want you guys to actually pick it down below in the comments. Whatever name I think is the best suited for Deku's powers, or, whatever, I'll definitely end up going with that. If not, I'm going to go with Mac Daddy Dragon. I'm just playing. But yeah, all jokes aside though, I'm definitely going to end up picking a random name. If I can't find one, and I'll probably just name him Deku. But we all know we don't want that. So please help me out with the name here. Anyways, that being said, boys, we're going to go ahead and get right into the amazing stuff. So this is when Deku will be told that afterwards he's going to be having to pick a little hero to internship with. Now, Deku will be looking at her choices because he'll definitely have a plethora of them. As Deku would proceed to look around, as he would see a couple heroes that gave him a choice. He would see the hero named Hawk, Endeavor, and other agencies such as that, like Best Genius. But as Deku was about to pick Hawks for his agentship, he would proceed to, wait and see what Alma has to say, because Alma would actually call him up and tell him that he actually wants to offer him an internship. And by offer, I mean offering for him to train Gran Torino, his old master. Now, when Alma would proceed to tell Deku about his old master, he'd begin to tremble. And this is when Deku would be like, hold on now, man. Are you trying to make me sign up for suicide because if you're scared of him? Then that tells me that this is not going to be very good for me. As Alma would just kind of be in a trance, oh, he's gonna, as Deku's just like, oh, okay, I'm gonna be in for hell, ain't I? As Alma would just look at him and say, afraid so. Now, this is when Deku would just decide that he's gonna rough it out, and he would proceed to go to the train station the very next day. Deku on the way to Gran Torino's would actually text Melissa, who's like Rose in the series. He would text her and he would ask her where she went. Melissa would proceed to tell him that he's actually going to be internship with Aizawa. As Deku would say, Aizawa? Why him? As she would say that she actually got an offer from him in the middle of class as soon as everything was done, and he offered to help her with her combat, as well as teach her how to use the scarf that he uses. And Melissa would have definitely been intrigued by that, thinking that could definitely be an asset in battle. Maybe she could design her own version that would be a lot more useful, and she could be a very effective capture hero and a combat hero as well. As Deku would hear that out, and he would actually think that's a pretty dope idea. Now, in terms of that, then we got Deku arriving to Gran Torino's. Now, as soon as he arrives there, he would see Gran Torino on the floor covered in ketchup, as he would say, "Eye of the Dragon." Now, this is when he would look around and see that it's just ketchup, as Deku would say, okay, good. As Gran Torino would get up and smack Deku across the head, saying, why'd you have to ruin such an amazing prank? As Deku would say, I don't know. As Gran Torino would just smile and say, well, let's go ahead and get started. As he would then say, what's your name again? As Deku would be like, oh my god, name's Doria. As Gran Torino would say, well, I'm guessing you already know mine. As Deku would say, yep, All Might told me all about you. He said you're a pretty scary guy. As Deku would say, I don't really see it. As Gran Torino would smile and say, well, I guess you're about to. As Gran Torino would activate his jet quirk and begin to berate Deku with a bunch of attacks coming in from every angle. Very unorthodox movements that Deku has never seen before. As Deku would proceed to get pummeled and thrashed on for a while. Of course, it wouldn't hurt as much as it would have hurt All Might because he has dragon scales and he has a very high percentage of one for all. So he'd definitely be about 70%, I believe it was at on the previous time. So at this point, let's just say that by the end of Gran Torino beating on him, Deku would probably be about 80%. Now, in terms of Deku's training, Deku would have accidentally ended up, messing up the house because his dragon form is pretty big. So afterwards, Gran Torino would have him do a little bit of a tongue training, if you know what I'm saying. He would have him do what his master in the original American Dragon series would have Jake do, and make him clean the toilet using his tongue. I figured I'd include that just for lols, and even though Gran Torino probably wouldn't have made him done that, I'm gonna make him do that just because it's funny. Now, this is when Deku would proceed to have to clean the toilet with his tongue, using a spitting motion and reversing it. And that's basically what his training is going to be like, getting beat on and cleaning. And in terms of Torino, he would basically just be chilling whenever Deku's cleaning and eating his little snacks, I guess you could say, is takisaki, takamiki. I don't know what it's called, boys, but you guys know what I'm talking about. Anyways, that being said, Deku and Gran Torino would just be training one day when Gran Torino would look at Deku and say, it's time. Let's go out and do a little bit of a real hero work. As Deku would say, are we going to go patrolling? As Gran Torino would look at him and say, yep. As Deku would be hype, he'd be like, finally, something other than cleaning and sparring with you. As Gran Torino would say, what's so bad about sparring with me? As he would say, nothing. I'm talking about the cleaning part. That's hell. As Gran Torino would laugh and say, as, Deku would proceed to, just have a little bit of fun. Now, this is when Deku would proceed to basically get on the train with Gran Torino, as they'd begin to talk for a little bit, and Torino would basically tell him that why is he always on his phone, as Deku would tell him that he's training he's texting his girlfriend, as Gran Torino would say, oh, so you got a little girlfriend, do you? You're gonna have to tell her that you were cleaning toilets with your tongue, right? And Deku's like, I don't know about all that, man, as Gran Torino would just start laughing. Now, this one out of nowhere, the Nomu would come busting in through the train as Deku and Gran Torino would get on guard. Now, Deku would go flying out through the windows as he would basically burn the Nomu's brain, taking it out instantly. As Gran Torino would say, kid, you need to go search for other people who are maybe in danger because of these creatures. As Deku would be right on it. Now, this is when Deku would proceed to patrol around, alleyways. He's looking for any potential dangers. As out of nowhere, Deku would notice that Ida's in an alleyway with a certain guy who has a knife about to stab into him. As Deku would shoot an ice ball straight at Stain, making him jump back. As Stain would say, what is this? As Deku would look at him and say, what you doing? As Ida would say, get out of here. This is my fight. As Deku would say, yeah, and look at how that's going for you. As Ida would get mad and Deku would pick him up as well as Native and fly them away. As Stain would be jumping from building to building, trying to catch up to Deku. This is when Deku would smile and say, well, it's time to get started. As Deku would actually land and he would revert back to his human form. As he would then say, you okay? As Ida would say, oh, it's you. I was a little phased by his attack. As Deku would begin to ask Ida what his powers are. As Ida would tell him that he's pretty sure he has the ability to paralyze people. As Deku would be weary of this move. As he would then say, well, guess I better be on guard. As he then says, dragon up! As he would then turn into a dragon and begin to, get into battle with Stain. Now, Stain would go into slice at Deku with one of his swords, as it would immediately break on Deku's scales. As Deku would say, yeah, they hardened a little bit with training with that old man. As Deku would proceed to use 80% of one for all to punch Stain into a crater, making him get knocked out, and this is when the hero reinforcements would arrive. Now, this is when Stain would have his video recording of, announcing that he's gonna take down this fake hero society, as Toga, Spinner, and Dabi would basically join the League of Villains. Now, this is when Deku would have the cleanup, and all of that would essentially go to canon. Now, Deku would be told by the police guy that he can't take the credit, with Deku just not really really caring about it, just thinking that he's not in it for the credit. He's just happy that he was able to save one of his friends, or acquaintances, I guess you could say, instead of friends. Now, this is when Ito would begin to thank Deku for saving him, since if he wasn't there, he would have died. As Deku would say that he doesn't need to sweat it, that it was all fine. He's a hero, alright? As he would tell Ito not to ever do something like that again. As Ito would thank Deku and tell him that he won't ever do anything like that. Now, this is when Deku would proceed to basically text Rose about everything that had happened, and she would tell him that that's pretty insane. And she would tell him that she's actually getting a little bit of a hang with the scarf, and that this scarf is actually very useful in battle. As she would have actually done a little bit of improvements on her suit, making the suit that is on her, instead of being bulky, it would be skin tight and give her about the strength of about 60% full cowling, because I like my characters OP. Now, this is when Melissa would basically create an outfit that looks like the Hunt clan, as her outfit would actually be sorry if you guys hear that, ambulance. Anyways, that being said, she would have her suit be, have a couple of improvements on it, and it would be a little tighter, so Deku would definitely enjoy the fit. Now, this is when Deku would proceed to walk up to Rose and ask her, what she's with. And Rose would just smile and say that, she improved her suit. And Deku and Rose would just hang out for a little bit. This is when Aizawa would announce to them all that they're going to be taking some finals, and that they're going to be having a race at the moment to see how much they've improved during the time that they were gone during their internships. As Deku would proceed to speed Blitz to All Might and win very easily, with Melissa actually winning her portion of the race, and them both getting first place in that part. In terms of everything else, everything goes to normal. And when they're told that they need to do a little bit of studying, Deku would look at Rose and would basically throw a letter at her saying that if she wants to study at his place tonight, that his mom's not going to be home. As she would smile and say that definitely. Now, this is when Deku and Rose would basically go to Deku's house, as they would begin to study real hard, man. They gonna really study. They studying so hard that they're sweating. I played too much. Anyways, but yeah, Deku and Rose would proceed to actually study and actually do a little bit of combat fighting. And this is when, the day of the finals would arrive. Now, as soon as it arrives, Deku and Rose would proceed to, just have a little bit of a good time. As Deku and Rose would proceed to just be chilling, hanging out. As he and her would proceed to basically ace the exam, or the written portion at least. And this is when they're both told that they're going to be having another part with Deku and Melissa being teamed up against All Might, the symbol of peace. Now, All Might, as soon as he sees that he's going to have to be fighting a juggernaut in Melissa, who has a 50% full cowling suit, basically, with Deku, who has like 80% of it, and his dragon powers on top of that, he would not hold anything back, and he would definitely get ready to eat dirt, since Deku could already do that to him previously. So this is going to be a little bit of an ass whooping for him. Now, in terms of the battle, Deku and Melissa would work in complete synchronous as they would proceed to take out All Might, kicking him down with Deku freezing All Might's body in place, with All Might not being able to move. This is basically where Deku and All Might, or Deku and Melissa, would basically take out All Might, and that's where we're basically going to be ending the little, not the part, don't click off yet, not the entire part 4, but the finals, I guess you could say, with Melissa and Deku basically being praised. And after this, everybody else would have their exams, as they would proceed to go to canon. Now, this is when Deku and Melissa would be on the bus on their way to the forest training arc, as Deku and Melissa would just be talking during the way there, as everybody would just be messing around, and Deku and Melissa would just be in the back making out. I'm not gonna lie, that's essentially what's going on. Now, this is when Deku would basically arrive and get off of the bus with everybody else, with them all being like, what are we doing here? Camp is all the way over there. As they would all just look down and be like, get back on the bus, as they would get thrown off the edge, and Deku would proceed to drag in up, as he would proceed to fly in the air and catch Melissa before they could fall, as he and her would proceed to be like, well, guess we gotta do this, as they would proceed to clear the entirety of the thing in about 2 hours, with Deku and Melissa being a great help. And this is when the heroes and the students would all arrive at essentially the same exact time, with the heroes basically giving the students their props for arriving so soon, telling them that they would have probably taken about one more extra hour doing that entire course. As Deku would just smile, thinking, well, I mean, I am a dragon. I'm the Japanese. Just kidding, he's not the Japanese dragon. The JD. The JD, it's like DJ backwards. Anyways, that being said, Deku would say, well, I mean, what can I say? As he would then look at Koda and say, hey, what's your name? As Koda would just go in and punch Deku in the balls. As Deku would get hit right in the nutsack, as he would then fall like a sack of potatoes and say, why? As he would then be thriving and playing, as Koda would be like, you fake heroes disgust me. As Deku would be in pain. Now, this is when he would proceed to drag him up and say, you're gonna be in pain. As Mandalay would then say, oh, please excuse him. He doesn't know what he's doing. As Deku would say, seems to me like he definitely knew what he was doing when he punched me in that area. As Mandalay would say, sorry about that. As Deku would just forgive Koda. As they would proceed to have their food made by the cat quirk people. As they would proceed to just go into the hot springs later on. This is when, instead of, I don't know if I kicked out Mineta or I didn't, but if I did, rehash that, Mineta's back. And Mineta would proceed to try to climb up the wall. As Deku would shoot a fireball at him, and Koda would punch his head at the same time, knocking him down. This is when Deku would let Mineta fall on the ground and get hurt. As out of nowhere, Koda would begin to fall because he had looked inside of the little bathing room that the girls were in. As he would begin to fall onto the ground, as Deku dragons up, and he begins to fly towards Koda, catching him in midair. As out of nowhere, Koda's just knocked out, and they begin to tell Deku Koda's story about his parents were killed at a young age. And Deku would proceed to be like, that's unfortunate. As Deku and Koda would just, Deku would look at Koda and just think that no wonder he's the way that he is. I mean, his parents were heroes, and because of that, they were taken away from him. As Deku would understand where Koda's coming from. Meaning that Deku would just be easy on Koda. During the day, they would all have their normal training, with Deku basically doing a lot of combat training. This when Class 1B would arrive, and they would proceed to tell them that, they want the entirety of the thing for themselves. As Deku would say, yo, you guys can't just barge in here and take the area for yourselves. As, Class 1B would be like, well, we can. As Aizawa would then walk up to everybody and say, well, we're sharing this whether you like it or not. As the Blood Hero would say, how about this? How about a friendly competition? My class against your class. As Aizawa would just seem to smile as he then says, how about this? Your class versus my student. As the Blood Teacher would begin to say, you're out of your mind, but I'll accept it. As Deku would proceed to basically take everybody in Class 1B out. As they would proceed to lose their privileges, and they would have to cook, clean, and do everything that Class 1A wants for the entirety of the time that they're there. This when nighttime would arrive, and they would have their test of courage, as Deku would go to drop off a bowl of curry for Koda. As Deku would basically be walking back to camp, as he's like, well, guess I'd just leave that for him and let him think about things. As Deku would be walking back, he would see a forest fire, as he would then think of Koda. As he would immediately rush over there, as he would see a giant behemoth of a man about to punch at Koda. As Deku would swoop in there and say, hey! As Muscular would be right about to hit Koda, as Deku would swoop in there, and he would begin to grab Koda barely, dodging the hit from Muscular. As Muscular then says, you're the dragon that Shigaraki wanted us to take out. Guess I'm gonna have a little bit of fun. As Deku would say in your dreams, I'm gonna have to take you out very swiftly. As Muscular would begin to laugh and say, well, guess I'm gonna have to take out a dragon. As Deku and Muscular would get into a heated battle, in which Muscular and Deku would actually be on not even terms at all. Deku and Muscular would get into a very, very, very decent battle where Deku at first doesn't use full cowling, and he's just kind of messing around with Muscular, trying to prove a point that he's way stronger than Muscular, and that for playing around with Deku, he could definitely end up losing more than just the battle. As Muscular would then, Deku would actually get caught off guard, and Muscular would punch Deku into the mountain. As Koda, seeing this, would proceed to use his water quirk on Muscular to make Muscular back off of Deku, since he was about to actually use a giant attack on Deku to actually do a lot of damage on him. When Muscular then looks at him and says, huh? That quirk. I remember taking out a couple of heroes who had that same exact power. As Deku would realize that this is the guy who killed Koda's parents. As Koda would open his eyes wide as he then says, You're... And that's where we're going to be leaving it off, guys. If you guys want part 4... Oh no, sorry. If you guys want part 5 to what if Deku had Jake Long's powers, definitely go ahead and smash that like button. And that being said, this has been your boy Zether. Out.